All right. So the CEO, and I realized in the last podcast, I kept calling him the president of the PGA Tour. The CEO of the PGA Tour, was that already a week ago or was it earlier this week when he came and had a press conference?
I think it was about a week ago.
So he came back and he shared a lot of his ideas for the new season. And there was a lot of interesting things, a lot of what we talked about in our previous podcast. It seems like he also agrees with, and he is going to now be implementing some of that into the updated new PGA Tour. But the one thing that really caught my attention was he said the PGA Tour is not committing to the ball rollback. And so that was really interesting to me. And so I wanted to talk about that to open up today's episode. One of the weird things about the rollback debate right now is that a lot of golfers don't know what is actually happening. So when I talk to other golfers, they're like, I thought that's just something that they're discussing. But no, it's a rule. It's a rule that they have changed. There is a ever-changing timeline on when they're going to implement it. But Roy, do you know about the rollback, and how much about the rollback do you know?
Yeah. So the rollback is technically they're not forcing a change on the. Well, I guess the result is it would force the ball to change. But really what they're doing is they're changing the testing conditions that make a ball quote unquote conforming, right? And that's specifically the USGA and the RA list of conforming equipment. The old testing equipment the old testing condition was that they were testing a ball hit at 120 miles per hour club head speed at a 10-degree launch with a 2,520 RPM spin, right? So this is specifically the driver. And the cap was 317 yards plus or minus 3 yards from a tolerance standpoint, which is essentially saying it's 320 yards, right?
Yeah.
A ball can't go more than 320 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, the tolerance is like the average, whatever. The new testing conditions is they increased the club head speed 120 to 125 miles per hour, 11-degree launch, and 2200 RPM spin, right? Largely what we know as quote unquote ideal launch conditions, right? So they're basically saying if you are an elite athlete and you can hit the ball really well under ideal launch conditions, the ball cannot go further than 320 yards is basically what it's saying. So the ball has to change in order to fit under that. That's it. There's no official, like the ball has to be X, Y, and Z or look X, Y, and Z. They can still make whatever they want, but it cannot go further than 320 yards.
Yeah, that's such an interesting, I think, test parameter, because all you're doing is really looking at three key components. So my initial thought was, well, then are they just going to start changing other aspects of data where you could still hit these numbers at these ideal numbers, right? But maybe if you launch it higher, maybe if you launch it lower, right, then get the spin just a tad above, 2200.
Yeah.
It's going to start like still performing like the balls of today. So I just thought it was very interesting that it's very limited to these three specific data points.
Yeah, I think there's a physics thing here, right? And the reason it's like the ideal launch conditions is that it does produce the optimal ball flight for an object of that size and that weight and the wind resistance and whatever, right? So like in theory, from a physics standpoint, this is actually what's going to make it go further or the furthest. But yeah, like, I don't know. You said this before, right? Like golf is just an evolution of like figuring out how to break the rules. So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody made something that conformed, but on like very different conditions, it actually goes significantly further. Like, that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. Yeah. And the timeline of implementation is also very, very muddy. So when they first came out, they basically said that new balls that come out starting 2028 has to conform to this professionally. And then for everyone else, it's 2030 when they're going to have to do that. So for us amateurs, right now, they've actually pushed that back and said, let's just make it universal 2030 for everyone, professionals and for amateurs. I think some of the pushback was from the manufacturers because they're like, now we have to manufacture two separate golf balls. Yeah. Although there is the conspiracy theory that they are already making two separate balls, right?
Yeah.
Like for example, the Pro V1 left dash was the professional ball that everyone's been using, and then now it's just available to the open market because us amateurs caught wind of it and wanted it and was willing to pay a lot of money for it. So
that's right.
So it was interesting that they changed it, and it's also interesting that there are a few golfers that are for the rollback, and I'm just going to call it a rollback. Yeah. And then there are also those that are adamantly against it, but more people are against it than are for it. And obviously the guy that's for it is Rory McIlroy, which was interesting because he's one of the guys that I think benefits from the distance. And then there are a laundry list of people against it. Bryson, JT, there was one other person, but I'm blanking. But yeah, so it's a very kind of divisive decision. And can you tell us a little bit about who's the USGA and who's the R&A? Because I think for the casual golfer, they're not sure what they actually do.
Right. Yeah. So the USGA, the United States Golf Association, R&A, which I think is the Royal and Ancient, that maybe, sorry, I always just know them as the R&A, but I believe it's the Royal and Ancient. They're the two bodies that globally set the rules of golf. Right. So they can differ. And I think there's like very, very minor differences in how they set the rules. But generally they talk to each other. Right. So it's not quite a monopoly because it's not necessarily a commercial relationship. But between the two of them, they govern most of these large tournaments. And then the USGA obviously runs the US Open and the R&A, the Open, or what a lot of Americans call the British Open. So they're the rules setters, and every other tournament body, major tournament body, let's call them. So the PGA Tour, probably a lot of the country clubs and how they set the rules for tournaments, a lot of the mini tours, they just say, hey, we're using the USGA rules or we're using the R&A rules, right? And they can modify it. There's no like forcing function on like, you have to use the USGA rules or else. But it is widely accepted that they set the standard of how golf should be played. So I think a lot of people don't realize like there's actually just like this rules committee, massive rules committee in the background. And they're the ones that are basically enforcing this. They're the ones that commissioned the study back in 2018, I think, is when they started this, when there was like a lot of hoopla over like, we gotta roll the ball back. And they like commissioned this massive study that took 2 years or something like that for them to conclude. That's about roughly when I stopped paying attention to this as well. But yeah, so they're the ones saying that the ball has to change.
And right now, there isn't any league that modifies the rules, to my knowledge, right?
Not greatly, right? So they have a few like, they call them, I think it's modified local rules or something like that, right? Where there's two categories. The leagues can change minor tweaks or they do make minor tweaks. And then depending on the tournament, whoever's hosting the tournament, they have provisions for specific rules that they can change. And we talked about this in a different episode. The USGA and the R&A have actually come out with rules that are optional to be deployed, right? So it's like, to your point, it's not like anybody's going and saying like, hey, we're going to go with something else or we're going to like change this wholesale. But they do give the option of making small tweaks here and there.
Yeah, that's why it was so interesting. The CEO of PGA Tour saying that we haven't made a decision whether we're going to adopt this or not. For me, I was like, what do you mean? You guys have always followed the rules. Are you suggesting or hinting that for the first time you're going to not follow a major rule set by the USGA or the R&A?
Yeah, and I think what's really and I learned this while we were getting ready for this episode, right? The PGA Tour has actually written into their paperwork or whatever it is with their own players, right? It just says we follow the USGA rules of golf, right? So it even says in their like standards like that this is what it is, and they have a phrase that says something like make sure your ball conforms or is on the USGA list of conforming equipment. So they actually just defer and say the USGA has this, like you go talk to them to figure out whether or not your equipment is correct.
Yeah, well, with the CEO being not someone from golf, as a reminder to our listeners, he's from the NFL. I'm actually wondering, is he going to stir things up more than we think?
Yeah.
Because if his goal is to make the PGA Tour as dominant as they're not going to, no league is going to reach the NFL standards. But if his goal is to elevate the PGA Tour, and I don't think he is, as we would call it, a traditionalist in the sense. So yeah, and even the changes right now, like there are a lot of quote unquote traditionalists that are not happy with some of the changes that he's making. And so I can see him potentially saying, hey, if this is going to hurt our game, we might not adopt it. And I have a few list of reasons why I think it might hurt the game, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Before we get into that, I did want to talk, who do you think is behind this? Because obviously, with all these decisions, there is lobbying power. There are people that are unhappy with something. And so they've asked the USGA and the R&A to look into it and make a decision. Who do you think lobbied for this change and why?
The shortest players on the tour because they couldn't keep up. No, I I was thinking about that. And I don't know. I mean, the Greenskeepers Association, maybe, right? And I say that like half jokingly because if you look at the report, there's 3 reasons that they quote as like, this is why it's destroying golf, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first is the course length, right? So they can't get that much more room to build these courses, or a lot of these courses are bounded, so they can't expand the course anymore. So from that regard, it's like, okay, maybe it is the architects, the owners, right? So like Troon Golf, for our listeners, like a major owner of some of the most famous golf courses in the world. The second one is cost and land use, right? So like it requires more land, which requires more water, and there's more maintenance costs. Like, okay, again, the owners of a lot of these golf courses. Kapalua famously had like a dispute about water, and there was a drought, and the course was like brown for like months, right? And looked unplayable. And there's always been a lot of hatred from the outside non-golfers saying that golf courses use so much water. Water is such a precious resource. Although now these days everybody's like, AI is ruining water, and they don't understand that argument. And then the last is a very traditional argument. And, I somewhat understand this, but I don't necessarily believe it. It's preserving course strategy, right? So saying there's a certain way that these courses are supposed to be played, and it ruins the courses when people can just dominate it in ways that people weren't doing 60, 70 years ago when the courses were built. Again, the owners, the country clubs, right? The people who have these very prestigious setups and reputations, but, there's always that famous adage, follow the money. These are the people that seemingly stand to lose the most.
Yeah.
But if that's the only thing, or those are the 3 major reasons that the USGA and the R&A listed, like for me, it's like, it wasn't the players. It wasn't necessarily the manufacturers. So it's like, who else could it be? And it's like, honestly, it's the people who own the courses and the greenskeepers, because they just don't want to mow more fairways.
No, it's absolutely not the manufacturers. And I think, the 3 biggest OEMs, right? Titleist, TaylorMade, and Callaway, all 3 of them came out and said they oppose it to a different level, right? Or a different degree. I mean, for manufacturers, they sell performance improvements. So for them to lobby for something that is essentially taking a step back in performance improvement, and the driver is the flashiest thing you can sell, right? And so I definitely don't think it's the manufacturers. I have a conspiracy theory that it is the courses of the major tournaments. I think it's Augusta National. I think it's St. Andrews. It's Oakmont Country Club. Like, they are the most recognizable courses. And Augusta National has done a lot of changes in lengthening the course to the point where they don't have any more land to expand into. Right. I think in a lot of the holes, for them to expand it, they have to buy Augusta Country Club. And Augusta Country Club basically came out and said, we are not selling any of our land, or you're going to have to, pay us a ridiculous amount of money.
Right.
And so I feel like it's like the historical championship courses. I've heard environmental pressure, but I think that is BS. I don't think the USGA really cares about sustainability. I don't think anyone truly cares about sustainability at that level. And the other thought is, and this might be a conspiracy theory on its own, but is it just the USGA and the R&A trying to justify their relevance? And they have to constantly be churning out different rules to just flex their muscles and say, hey, we exist for a reason. We are standing up for someone. And so it's to just make sure that they don't go obsolete. And so that is probably my biggest conspiracy theory that they just made up. They're like, let's just pick on this so that we stay relevant.
Yeah. I would buy into all of those conspiracy theories except for Augusta. Even though I know like the whole like Augusta Country Club thing, but if you look at the history of Augusta National, they change their course every 20 years. If you look at them historically, right? So Bobby Jones, famously 1930s. And then I think it was the 50s, the 70s, and again in the 90s. And then now, most recently, in the early 2000s, I think was their last major change, right? So it's like every 20 years, they're changing it anyway, right? I think Augusta has this culture of maintaining its course to be strategically difficult. Right. So it's not like all of a sudden the ball is what is making Augusta change the course and it's been pristine since like 1934. No, they go through this. And I think a lot of courses go through this, right? Where it's like, yeah, the game has evolved, for any number of reasons. People are better, have better equipment, they have better training, they have whatever. The depth of field is a lot better. And I think that's a major thing that we haven't talked about yet. But in terms of like what depth of field is doing to the perception of distance, but I think all of those things combined have just led to like, yeah, they're always going to be evolving the course. The ball is not going to be the thing that makes or breaks the spirit of the game of golf, in my opinion.
That is very interesting to hear from our traditionalist. Well, let's jump into, do we personally actually think that this is a problem? Distance, is that a problem? And does the rollback solve anything? I know you already kind of started that, but just wanted to kind of hear overall, is distance becoming a problem in our sport?
No, I don't think it is. My big reason is, if you look at the distances, when they started this conversation in the late 2000s, that is the biggest jump in distance that people saw. Right. So it was like I think it was from like the 80s, 90s to like the early 2000s. The number, something like the average PGA drive improved 14 yards over the course of 20 years. Right. So it was just shy of a yard a year. And then it plateaued. Right. Yeah. It has not actually gone up significantly in the last 10 years. We may have just reached the cap of what a lot of people can do. And you said this in another podcast. Like, nobody has actually averaged over 310 yards driving distance on the tour ever, right? Or I forget what the exact number was.
I think it was 320.
Oh, sorry, 320. Either way, well, they can't, because the ball apparently cannot go that far. But either way, they're capped, right? Like this is it. There's only so many other places for now, until somebody makes a major leap. There's only so many other places that they can tweak out a few yards, right? So, golfers aren't all of a sudden going to become even more superhuman, in my opinion. That's one. The other is, if you look at the tournaments themselves over the last, God, I wish I knew exactly when this was, but I think it's something like over the last 40 or 50 years, the average score, especially in the big tournaments on the big golf courses, has improved by, I think, 1 stroke, right? So it's like, great. People may be playing it a little bit differently in terms of what the actual whole shot by shot look like versus 30 years ago, but they're not crushing these courses. And even like the Tiger era, when he was coming off of the Balata ball before things went even crazy, he was doing more impressive things then than people are doing now with the modern equipment. So I don't think it's fundamentally ruining any part of the game.
Yeah. And what I feel the rollback does, because there's been a lot of testing done so far, and it basically says that the longest hitters are going to be losing 15 to 20 yards. The average elite hitters are going to be losing like 10. And then for most recreational golfers, they're not going to really see a huge effect, right? But what I hate about this rule is that they found that there is a small number of golfers who can drive super far. We're talking about the Rory McIlroys, the Bryson DeChambeaus, the Cameron Champs. And they average, I think, like 326. That's their average, which means they can hit it farther than that, right? They're basically saying that, yes, it does affect everyone across the board, but we're going to hurt their game the most. It's not an even, set of rules that affects everyone. Not everyone gets to drop, 15 yards. The rule is specifically made so that the longest hitter lose their advantage the most. And I think that is one of the things that I hate about this rule. It's essentially, if you want to roll it, this ideology back, it's like saying when Tiger came to the league, Tiger was out driving everyone by 20, 25 yards. So let's create a rule that hurt him more than everyone else. It's still going to hurt everyone else, but let's hurt his advantage the most.
Right.
Tiger is the greatest thing that happened to the growth of this sport. And I feel like this rollback hurts the growth of the game. And to the casual fan, or to the fan that is on the outside looking in, right? They are kind of interested about golf, so they're willing to check it out. I feel like it hurts that viewer from fully jumping on, because now everyone they're trying to even the game. And if someone has the physical capabilities to swing over 125 miles per hour, they should have an advantage. And if they can do that accurately, like, that is their advantage. But they're essentially wanting to remove that advantage, the same advantage that Tiger Woods had. And so I think that is the thing that annoys me the most about this rollback.
That's fair. My counter, though, is world number 1 right now, Scotty. You know where he stands in terms of average driving distance?
Like mid 310s?
300. So he ranks
really?
70th. He ranks 70th on tour, right? And I think if you look at the strokes gained, right, approach shots is still the most dominant data point. in terms of likelihood to gain advantage on the golf course. And so if you look at the ODS testing rules, it's largely driver, right? Where I think if you start going to mid and short irons, and wedges and putter almost don't matter at this point, there is an impact, there is an effect, but it is a lot smaller than what it does to the driving distance, right? So the ball rollback is largely about the driving distance, but if you look at the number one player, what makes people score, it's not the driver. Do you have an advantage if you're driving long? Sure. Is that going to be the thing though that makes you dominate every tournament? I think that the data is showing no, it's not that anymore, right? It's not what Tiger had. I give it to Tiger back in the early 2000s. He was doing things that nobody else was doing, but it's almost become commoditized now to a certain degree versus, I think what we were saying before.
Wait, but your argument is that because the number one player in golf doesn't drive far, that this is not unfair to the long hitters?
No, I think it's, wow, when you say it like that sounds ridiculous. But no, my argument is because the number one player in golf is not dominating purely on distance, right? That taking some distance away from the longest hitters should not be the thing that ruins the game for them, right? They have other things that they can and should be working on. Are you taking away some advantage? Sure. Are you making it so that they are completely non-competitive at this point? I don't believe so, right? So I think that's my point, right? It's not going to ruin them, is my point.
I think that for some players, and this happens across every sport, right? You can't, unless your name is Tiger Woods, you can't be the best at everything. And so because you can't be the best at everything, you have to pick and choose where your strengths and weaknesses are going to be. Bryson DeChambeau struggles with his wedges, struggles with that approach game from like 120 in. We have our own theories
Probably
behind
because
why.
He has, one length and wedges.
But that's what he created his game around. And so they have molded and have taken a strategy and have created their game around it. I think by essentially handicapping those golfers that have decided to pick distance, that is where I see an issue with the rollback.
Okay. I mean, I see some validity in that. Do you think they're picking distance, or do you think it's just like the athletic changes in golf? The Tiger effect on athleticism is just making everybody just naturally hit it longer.
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, golfers today, if you put them side by side to golfers from the 90s, they are way more athletic than they are, but that's across the board, right?
Right.
But the Pro V1 effect also does have a thing where, before you either had to choose spin and accuracy or you had to pick distance, right? And the Pro V1s basically came and just destroyed that concept and was like, you can have, the cake and eat it too kind of thing.
Right.
And so I do think there is a dual effect in both the equipment improvements, but obviously the golfers are way more athletic today. So yeah, I think it's both.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't know. I'm surprising myself with how I'm arguing now that we're talking about this, right? Because I thought I would be like, yeah, roll it back. I think it's more like, do I think that they're breaking some of these courses? Breaking is a strong word. I think they're playing the courses in a way that the original architects and some of the people who are in love with these courses don't want to see, right? Okay, I see that argument. I think the distance argument is just overhyped. If you look at all of the numbers, like, yes, everybody is hitting it further, everybody is doing a lot more, but I don't think it's creating some ridiculous advantage just for the long drivers. And I don't think that they are dominating the sport, especially from a scoring standpoint, in a way that says like, hey, this is like the end of golf. What the other side that we haven't talked about at all is you can set up strategically, you can set up your course strategically to defend itself.
Right.
Out, to combat distance. And like, for some reason, we never talk about that part.
Yeah. I forget, I'm blanking right now which course it was, but there was a course where the Brysons, the Rorys, they were basically cutting the corner. And so they decided, I think, to plant a huge tree, like right off the tee box. And so there are ways that they can, protect the course layout. A lot of people have also talked about, why don't you just make the roughs higher or harder. And so you don't have to expand, but now there is more of an emphasis on accuracy.
Yes.
Rather than you having to change it from a golf ball perspective. I don't know what the argument is, like why they wouldn't do that and instead decided to choose equipment.
I think there's a lot of like, again, the way the course is supposed to be. right? Like the US Open is famous for making conditions just ridiculous. Right. Where like, I feel like every year as they come up on the US Open, like the week of, the Golf Channel would send out a reporter. They would go out to the rough and they would just drop a ball and they'd be like, look, it disappeared. Like, I just remember that segment like every year. And so, yeah, you could do that. And then a lot of people will like cry about it, right? They'll be like, that's unfair. That's whatever. It's like, no, that's golf. And then what was the tournament a few weeks ago where they like double seeded the Bermuda? And so like everybody was like flubbing their chips.
That was the Waste Management, right?
Oh, yes.
Your
that
favorite.
was the Waste Management. Yeah, this is why I blocked that out of my memory. Yeah, you could do stuff like that. Is it sustainable for the everyday golfer on every course? No. There's like extremes that you're taking it. And then when it comes to like putting in the greens, right? Like sometimes they're rolling them so fast that they're putting the green at risk, right? Of losing the green. But, you know, I think they should consider it. And these are largely like woodland style courses. Right. So what you see more of in America versus I feel like in England or Great Britain, depending on which tournament you're looking at, a lot of these aren't issues because you go to a link style course and the weather just defends the course for you. Right. So it's like, and like you'll see some of that at like Torrey, right. Where sometimes, you know, what's that really short hole, 13 or whatever it is, like, when there's a really bad wind or a storm, they're hitting like a driver 170 yards. You know, so it's like there are other things to defend the course against distance. So that's why I'm saying like no professional golfer is so one-dimensionally distanced that it is single-handedly ruining all of the scoring in all of the courses.
Let's see it from a view of like a casual golfer or someone who is not like a diehard golf fan, right? And, you know, I compare other leagues quite often, and the other leagues love scoring. The NFL especially loves scoring. Basketball these days, I don't know if you heard, but there's a player named Bam Adebayo for the Miami Heat. He just broke Kobe's record. And I am one of those guys that was not a fan, not because he broke Kobe's record, but how he went about it. Right. And so I feel like the traditionalists are kind of taking that argument with golf, where they're saying that with distance, because you are breaking the way that these courses are played, that scoring is getting out of hand. And in the traditional context, when you're trying to compare eras and compare, you know, scores of the history and all that, it becomes kind of broken in that sense. But it's funny because you did mention that we've only improved by like 1 or 2 strokes.
1 stroke.
Right? Yeah. Over the last, like 20, 30 years?
Yeah.
And so how do you feel about like my thought that for the casual fan or for the borderline fan, they love seeing speed, power, and just good scoring?
Yeah, I think golf is a little bit different, right? Because with a lot of these other sports, especially team sports that are a little higher energy, at least for me, and I'm not the biggest, you know, I don't watch a lot of NFL or NBA. In those instances, you want to root for your favorite player. Right. Like you have a lot of like passion around like that. You want to see incredible plays. You want to do whatever. And that relates to the score going up. Right. Golfers, I think, want to see golfers do things that they can't do. Right. Like they want to be impressed with these shots because it makes my theory. It makes the average golfer have something to chase after. Right. And that's the beauty of golf, which is the amateur plays largely the same equipment that you have access to similar courses, whatever. So you have fleeting moments of glory, right? Like you hit that one perfect shot, the one perfect drive, right? You like nail your approach shot like 3 inches, you know, from the hole and almost hold it out. And yeah, it could be accidental, but you have these fleeting moments of glory. And so you want to see these players do amazing things because that's the thing that you're chasing too. So you do want to see the scores come lower. So I think the average golfer doesn't really care as much. Right? Like, unless you're so deep seated in tradition, and we have people like comment on our podcasts and our reels that are like, you guys should not be allowed anywhere near the game of golf. Like, you don't understand the beauty of the sport. No, I very much understand the beauty of the sport. But I also want to be impressed with what some of these professionals can do, because if they're no different than me, what's the point of watching them?
Yeah. No, I think I'm the same way. And I think one of the things that I love about golf is that you can have that direct comparison. Because like you said, you could play the same equipment, play the same courses. Not often, but you can play the same courses. And so being able to compare ourselves to the professionals, I think is one of the most connecting aspects of our sport.
But to that point, in terms of like the amateurs, right? The elite hitters are going to lose, what was it, like 14, 20 yards or something like that. The average to high average, whatever you want to call it, PGA Tour player, it's something like 10 to 15 yards. The elite amateur, right? So the amateurs that can bomb the ball, I think are going to lose something like 7 to 10 yards or somewhere in that ballpark.
I think
I forget the...
I think the one that I read was that they're going to lose 9 to 12 yards.
9 to 12. Okay. So
yeah.
Either way, right in that ballpark, right? So about 10 yards. If you believe Instagram, that's like half of the golfers out there. If you don't believe Instagram, that's a very small portion of golfers that can actually hit it that far. But you and I actually fall in that category, right? So your 300-yard drive is no longer going to be 300 yards. You're going to lose, and you're going to be down in like the low 290s, right? At best. Does that bother you?
It does. It does bother me. It does bother me that I am being penalized more than someone who hit it shorter. Because someone who is hitting it 250, I think is only going to lose like 3 yards. And I am going to be penalized 10 yards. And so that annoys the heck out of me because that is a advantage. And kind of like what we talked about for the pros, like I think amateurs do the same thing. I think we know our strengths, know our weaknesses, and we just honestly don't have the time to have a well-rounded game where you're good at everything. Right. So I think you do have to kind of pick and choose. And I have absolutely chosen distance. That is plus, you know, I think the former athlete in me just wants golf to be more athletic. And so I want to show my athleticism and be able to bomb drives and be able to hit farther than everyone. And we've talked about before that is an advantage for me. A material advantage where I've played, you know, high school golfers with, you know, single handicaps when I was, you know, in my teens, and I would beat them because of the intimidation that my distance offered. So it does bother me. It does bother me quite a bit.
Okay, but let me play it back to you in numbers, right? So what you're saying is today you have an advantage over the average amateur golfer of 50 yards, let's call it, on your drives. Moving forward, if the ODS rule stands and all the changes that go into effect, which, I mean, as of now, it's only the PGA Tour that's really like questioning it, right? The USGA and the RNA have basically said, hey, this is a thing.
They're just not sure about timeline, it seems.
Right. They're just not sure about timeline, right?
Yeah.
But when that happens, right? So in 4 years, let's call it, now your advantage shrinks to 43 yards. Like it's literally, I mean, if you take an average gapping of, you know, 10 to 15 yards per club, you went from like 4 club advantage to 3.5 club advantage. Is that really, I get what you're saying, but is that really going to materially change golf for you?
It will definitely, I think there is definitely going to be an adjustment because in the courses that we play, the distance that I hit, I don't have a full shot in on, I would say, 2/3 of the holes if I hit my driver fairly straight. By losing 10 yards, I now have to hit a full swing in order to get into the green. And so it would have an adjustment period for me.
You can't do the same impartial shot on just one club up?
No, remember we talked about this. I struggle doing mid irons with that same swing. Yeah. Because otherwise I would just incorporate that up until like 150 yards. And the last time I went to the range, which was already weeks ago, I tried it and it didn't work out. Or what's interesting is that the yardage doesn't stay in the gap anymore with the mid irons. It becomes a lot closer. So I use that half swing method up to my 9 iron. And the moment it goes to 8-7, the gapping becomes smaller and smaller. And so that was what I've noticed in the last range session.
Wait, were you using your GC3?
I was.
Oh, interesting. Right. Does the GC3 give you roll though? Because
it gives you total, but it's not, you know, I feel like total distance.
It's an estimated roll, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, either way, still, that's interesting. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's still not fair, right? Because it is like the people that have a advantage, you know, it's like they're being penalized versus like the people who are really good putters. It's like, well, right. I guess, no, it's not people who are really good putters. I mean, they took away anchored putting because people were.
Although, you know, there was a lot of people, because you bring this up, Akshay Bhatia won a tournament 2 weeks ago and he has a broomstick style. You know, people started like analyzing his putt and they're like, that fool is anchoring. They're like, he is putting his hand on his chest and that absolutely is anchoring. And so that actually got a lot of internet hate on his putting stroke.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't see the hate, but I mean, I feel like his playing partners would see that if he was doing that. No.
I don't know. It's very, I mean, I saw some of the videos and I think depending on the angle, like you can absolutely make the argument because of, just his shirt being a little bit loose. And someone was like, this is why he wears looser tops instead of something athletic because you can hide the fact that you're anchoring. But yeah, he's been accused of cheating by a lot of online fans.
Oh God, that's so funny. I feel like that's something that some rules official would have caught at some point, but
I think golf.com actually talked about it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
they looked at some of the videos and they're like, well, like you can't say for a fact, but it reminds me of the Internet Invitational where it's like he did something.
Yeah.
He did something, but we don't have conclusive proof that he cheated.
Right. So getting back to the question though, for you, other than the fact that you are being penalized, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the ODS testing changes may not be fairly applied to everyone. But do you think distance is actually a problem for golf?
I don't think distance is a problem for golf. I actually think it's an advantage for golf. I think for the product of golf, let's take away, the competitiveness or the sports, but the product that it is, a sports entertainment product, I think distance helps that out quite a bit. And the analogy that I like to make, well, there's two. But I think, there's the trend in social media where someone will comment, tell me what this means in NBA terms, right? Mm-hmm. In NBA terms, this is the league saying we're going to raise the rim to 12 feet because athletes are getting more athletic. They're dunking better. They're shooting better. The scoring is at 140s and 50s. So we're going to make everything difficult by raising the rim. The better analogy also is Major League Baseball, where a couple of years ago, they decided that people are hitting too many home runs. And so let's change the ball. And Major League Baseball actually changes the baseball quite a bit, but usually there's just not a lot of debate over it. But this one made debate because they basically said too many home runs. Let's cut down the number of home runs by I think a fourth or a fifth or something like that. And so they changed the ball. And so scoring went down, not enough home runs. And yes, there is an aspect of skill and pitching that got increased, but the casual fan didn't care about that. They want to see home runs. They want to see runs. They want to see action. And I think that by removing this and by leveling the playing field, yes, there are going to be aspects of the skilled components, the shot shaping, the hitting your spins correctly, that will get improved and that will be more showcased. And my argument is, does the casual fan and with the mindset or the glasses of growing the game, is that what is going to convert someone to become a golf fan? Or is it seeing someone, drive the green from 340 yards out?
Right. Yeah. That's fair. I think, and this is not a topic for today, but I don't know that I actually want the game to grow. So
we talked about this.
Maybe we do have to talk about that at depth one day because I have a lot to say about whether or not the game should be growing. One thing that we didn't talk about that I wanted to mention, because we talked about before, can the PGA Tour just ignore this rule? Right? I don't know what the new CEO is thinking, but he can't unless the PGA wants to get into the business of making their own conforming rules. Right. And having an entire department to test equipment, check conformity, do all of that, and technically rewrite all of the rules, right? Because you can't just say, hey, we're going to just copy the USGA rules at this point in time and freeze it and make it our own rules and fork, right? They actually have to have an entire rules committee determining rules at that point. Operationally and overhead wise, it's just too hard for them to try to deviate from the USGA and the RNA. Going back to that point, and
I don't. Okay, but because he's from the NFL has their own rules committee. Every year when they change the rules, and the NFL is, we talked about how they are known to change the rules the most from one season to the other. With him coming from the NFL, I could see him wanting that. He could very much be thinking, why is there another organization making our rules when we need to think about the rules necessary to make our league better? And so why are we not controlling it as the biggest, most powerful and most watched league in the world? So I could absolutely see him thinking that they need to be in charge of their own rules. Yeah,
I could see that. I mean, I don't think it's operationally sound, nor do I think it's from a cost perspective a good idea, but I could see him trying it.
Do you think it's really going to be that expensive? I don't think it's that expensive.
I mean, you got to hire probably a few dozen people at that point, right? So Like, is it that expensive versus, what the PGA Tour makes? I guess not. But is it like operational overhead? Like, yes, it is definitely operational overhead.
But in order to get more control over your league, I think it is absolutely worth the investment.
That's fair.
Yeah. Well, tell us what you think. Is the rollback protecting the integrity of the game or the tradition or something else? Or is it fixing a problem that most fans didn't really know existed or cared? Well, whether it's your first time here or you're a regular listener, thanks for joining us and welcome to the Off Track podcast, where we talk all things golf from an amateur point of view. I'm Charles. That's Roy. We're two golf-obsessed tech guys, and we're currently working on our own golf company. So make sure to click subscribe or follow on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And also follow us on our socials at TRAQ Golf on Instagram and TikTok.
Okay, this week in golf. So Colin Morikawa withdrew from the Players' Championship halfway through his first round. And whether or not you believe it is a major championship or not, widely watched, a lot of people follow it. And so he's been getting a lot of hate from a lot of people for withdrawing in the middle of the first round. So want to hear your reaction on A, Colin just withdrawing with an injury overall, and B, him withdrawing in the middle of the first round.
Yeah, so a lot of the comments that I saw felt that Colin must have known about this injury beforehand. So a lot of online golfers feel that when you have something with your lower back, it's not something that just happens on a snap or that just happens in one bad swing. It's something that kind of builds up. You feel something during your warm-ups. And I don't know, like I could see that, but I could also see that even if I feel something, if I think I can go as a competitor, that I would want to still try. But I think the biggest hate is that he took away someone's spot. And I don't know. I think that is a little bit overblown. I think a lot of this comes from the fact that people don't love Colin. There are times where he's had media snubs. He had the I don't owe anyone anything controversy. So I think there is just a little bit of that being carried over to his injury.
Yeah. And he officially, so the timeline was he played the 10th hole. He said during warm-up, he felt great. On the first tee box, he felt great. Teed off on 10 and on 11, took a practice swing, and he said he felt his quote-unquote back go. I kind of understand Colin. I feel like I kind of side with him on this one because I have had weird tweaks happen on a single swing, right? You feel fine, you're playing. I mean, we played together like 2 months ago where I was like, guys, I can't move my neck, right? Like all of a sudden, I just had like muscle spasms down my neck and shoulder, and I couldn't turn my neck anymore. I still finished the round though, so I don't know about Colin withdrawing, but I can understand, especially when you're on the wrong side of 40, when different muscles just go for no reason. But Colin is young and a professional athlete. Maybe he could have played through it a little bit more than he had tried to. The other interesting thing that's happening, Will Ferrell is making a show called The Hawk. Right? So this is also coming on the heels of Owen Wilson having a golf show on Apple TV. How do you feel about golf-based shows and movies?
I don't watch a lot of them, but the ones that I do watch, I think I generally have loved. I know Owen Wilson, the show Stick, right? I have yet to watch it, but I grew up watching Happy Gilmore, and Happy Gilmore was my golf movie. And I know it's not very like technically golf sound, but yeah, I remember Caddyshack, but Caddyshack was a little bit before my time. And so I only recall clips of it. Same thing with Tin Cup. I only know that there is that scene where he hits into the water and just hits it over and over and over again, right? And so yeah, I think I'm the wrong person to ask because I don't consume that much golf shows or movies. But how about you?
Tin Cup and Happy Gilmore came out the same year.
Did it really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did.
I feel like Tin Cup is like, in my mind, it's like 10 years
so much older.
Happy Gilmore.
Yeah, I mean, it's shot that way. I have seen Caddyshack, I don't know, a few dozen times at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Tin Cup. The Greatest Game Ever Played. Have you ever watched that movie?
Mm-mm.
With Shia LaBeouf?
No, I think I saw Bagger Vance for a little bit.
Bagger Vance with
Will Smith. With Will Smith, and I didn't finish it.
I mean, I remember like the mid 2000s during the winter when there's no tournaments. These movies are just on repeat. They're literally just like, so that's why I ended up watching them so many times. I want to say that outside of the classics, right? And I think we named all of them. Caddyshack, Happy Gilmore, not Happy Gilmore 2. That movie was atrocious. Tin Cup, The Greatest Game Ever Played, Legend of Bagger Vance. Outside of that, everything disappoints me because either I want a great story and it materially involves golf, or I want great golf that happens to be a really good story. And I feel like a lot of these are just like mediocre stories that just revolve around golf. So that's why I just, for the most part, not a fan. I think I'm still on like episode 2 of Stick.
How is it?
I can't get myself, like, I'm not drawn back to it, right? There's nothing about it that I'm just like, yes, this is going to be the next great thing to watch.
You know, I remember though watching this show on YouTube. I think it's like a comedy thing. It kind of has like an Office feel to it, where there's a lot of like interviews and things like that. And it's the story of like this like rundown like golf course, and it just makes fun of like stereotypical golfers in the first couple episodes. So that was like not bad to watch. And it was like 15-minute episodes. I think it's called Shanked. It's on YouTube. That I watched a little bit and I thought it was funny, but for the most part, I watch sports movies not for the actual like sport itself, right? I think one of the greatest sports movies is Remember the Titans, and it's a football movie, but the football aspect of it, as a former football player, is not very accurate. And so it's very hard to watch sports movies or shows for the actual sports element. So it has to have a story element to it. And I feel like nothing has really caught my attention on the golf side that has made the story that elevated.
You should watch The Greatest Game Ever Played.
Okay.
It's based on a true story. It's Francis Ouimet. He won the US Open as an amateur, but he was like a caddy. He was like a nobody. And he came back and won. And so I thought the movie was really good, LaBeouf aside, because this was before he went crazy and, you know, whatever. But I would, if it was back on TV right now, I would watch it again.
Okay. I'll check it out.
Cool. That's it for current events.
Well, as always, today's episode is brought to you by TRAQ Golf, the training system designed to help you practice like the pros. The TRAQ spray shows you exact strike patterns, whether you're on turf or grass. It also allows you to do drills just like the pros that you wouldn't dream of doing with alignment sticks. And the blueprint, it helps you build structure into every session. Together, they take the guesswork out of practice so you can actually improve faster. Find out more at traqgolf.com. That is TRAQ golf.com.
Okay, so for our last segment, we're going to do something fun again. Well, no, all of our segments are fun. We're going to do another blind ranking, but this one is going to be the most intimidating shots in golf. I want to know, for you, which shot actually shakes you the most right before you take it. I'm going to have 7 options. I'm going to have you blind rank them. Okay, ready?
Okay.
The first one is driver on the first tee with a lot of people watching.
I don't think that is that intimidating for me, because even if I don't hit a good shot, like I don't care. And so I think that one, I'll put that as a 6 on my ranking.
Okay. 3-foot putt to break 80.
This has happened a few times, and I think I missed all of them. And so I have a few 80s in my scorecard where it came down to the 18th hole. This is intimidating. I'm going to put this at a 3 though, because I think there's going to be more intimidating shots up ahead.
Is it less intimidating for you if it's longer?
Yes, because if it's longer, there isn't an expectation for you to make it. And so I think it's way less intimidating if it's a little bit longer.
Yeah, I agree. I would much rather have like a 6-7 footer than a 3-footer.
Yeah.
Okay. Hard carry over water, 200 yards, no bailout.
This is definitely intimidating, but I don't think it's going to be my top 2. So I'm going to put this at 4.
A short-sided bunker shot to a tight pin.
That is not that intimidating for me, because I think I have a pretty good bunker shot where I can make it spin. And so I'm going to put that. I'm debating between 5 or 7. If there's going to be anything that makes it less intimidating, let's put that at 7 for me.
Okay. A tight tee shot with OB on both sides.
I think this is very similar to number 6. Which was the driver with fans watching or people watching. Yeah. I'm just going to say that's a 5.
Okay. A downhill chip to a fast green that you also have to go downhill to the hole.
This is a bit intimidating for me. And I think we've had this shot a few times where you told me to just pull out my 3-wood next time and just put it in. But I struggle with this shot because when I pull a 3 or 5 wood, I don't know how hard I'm supposed to hit it. This is definitely intimidating. I don't think it's number 2, but let's put it at number 2.
Okay. So the last one is the most intimidating shot for you, which is a punch shot through the trees with a tiny window.
Oh, that's not intimidating. I have perfected that shot because I am inside the tree so often. It definitely can be intimidating, but it's not. It's a tough shot. It's a tough shot, and there are times where I get frustrated because I don't get through, but it definitely isn't my number one. But I guess for the game's sake, I have to put it as my number one.
It's funny because I feel like the courses that we play here, like there's not a lot of like wooded area that you can play out of. But there's this course in New Jersey that one day we have to go. I don't know if there's any listeners in New Jersey, but Charleston Springs South Course, hole number between 7 and 8. There's these two. It's like a short dogleg par 4 and then a par 5 coming back the other way. But there's this wooded area in between where the trees are pretty sparse, right? Like they're all like 10, 20 feet away from each other, but it's a forest. So you can very easily find your ball, but your window is like tiny because you have to weave it through like 7 trees to get to the end versus it's not like one tiny window. It's like you have to avoid 7 trees. So those types of shots terrify me because there's like an 80% chance it hits one of those trees and then just like comes back and nails me in the face. But other than that, I get what you mean. Okay. All right. So
I'm kind of curious though for you. Obviously, you know the list, but if you had to rank them from 1 through 7, what would be your ranking?
Oh God, I think it's the tight tee shot with OB on both sides.
That'd be your number one.
That's my number one. Either that or the first tee with a lot of people. So the ones that you're like 5 or 6 that you don't care, because I feel like if I'm playing loose and relaxed, no problem with my driver, and I'm doing fine. The minute I feel like there's a lot of people watching me or I get a little intimidated, I tighten up a little bit and then things tend to go really bad starting from there. So that's where I feel like I start getting a little bit in my own head.
Now, if you had to be honest and share what your most intimidating 1 or 2 shots in golf would be, what is that for you? And it doesn't have to be from this list. It could be just any shot. You have to do it, and that's what you get the most nervous about or intimidated about.
The worst shot in golf is also, I think, for me, one of the best shots in golf, which is a par 5, nailed the drive, sitting pretty in the fairway, and it's like 270, 280 to the green. And if I hit a perfect 3-wood, it's reachable. That to me is the most intimidating shot because there's so much pressure carrying there of this is such an opportunity for like glory, right? Like to be on in 2 and you're doing great. But my 3-wood is so volatile sometimes that I'll either hit an amazing shot or I'll like somehow skull and slice it all at the same time and I'll end up like 3 holes away. So I feel like I get the most nervous over that shot. Same question back to you though. What shot makes you the most nervous to have?
So I have 2 that come to mind, but both of them are more, I think, scenarios that also play into that shot, kind of like yours. There are holes where it is like 400-yard par 4 and I hit a bomb of a drive. We're talking like 330 and everyone else hits it 260, right? So you are so ahead. And when one of the farther guys makes it on the green, there is so much pressure for me to be closer than him. And so this is before I started doing my half swings. That was actually the most intimidating shot for me because now there's also external pressure and almost like peer pressure that, you drove so far ahead of this guy, but you're not going to be closer to the pin than him. Right. So I think that added a lot of pressure. Today, not so much after I started incorporating that half swing, but I think that for the longest time was the most intimidating shot for me.
What's the other one?
Today, I just suddenly blinked. I had another one and I just like completely blanked on what it is. So I guess it's not that intimidating.
Not that intimidating. Charles doesn't get intimidated on the golf course. He has nerves of steel.
Can you think of any shot that you think would be very intimidating for me?
For you, having to intentionally snap hook one.
Okay. That was on my mind. The ones where I have to hit a draw. Otherwise, I have to lay up. And then now I have I can't make it on the green. That is a scenario that I don't love. And I think I'm at a disadvantage. Yeah. And I can't hit over the trees.
Yeah. I feel like there's this like shot that I've seen you have a handful of times, which is it's usually a dog leg or you've hit it left into some trees and you have a shot, but you just have to put a crazy hook spin on it.
Yeah.
And inevitably I feel like you look so defeated going up to the ball. It's not like, but I've seen you hit it before. I've seen you also hit the reverse, right? The slice. But when you're like intentionally putting that much curve on a ball, I feel like you're just like, no, this is not going to work out.
If I had to pick a shot for you today,
I know where you're going with this.
the shot that I think you look the most uncomfortable is actually just a chip shot where you are, where you're just like 10 yards off the green. And it's usually the ones where, it's angled awkwardly where you are on the short side of the green. I could definitely see like a lot of anxiety.
Yeah. God, my chipping game has just gotten like dramatically worse to the point. I don't know if I didn't tell you this. Like I've started practicing chipping cross-handed.
Wait, what is cross-handed? Like left hand low?
Left hand low.
Okay.
Just to like give myself a different feel because the yips have gotten like just so bad. And I've just gotten like so terrified of, especially if I'm on tight grass, if I'm on fairways and it's mowed kind of tight, like I just get so anxious about those chips that I'm like, I got to give myself like a different physical cue. I feel like Charles Barkley about to hit a golf ball when I have a chip. So God, it is terrible.
Maybe we need to change your grind.
Oh, I see what you did there. I see what you did. I have tried all of them though. None of them worked for me. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow on your favorite podcast platforms, and check out our Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at TRAQ Golf. That's enough getting off track. May your mulligans be many and your 3 putts be few.